Okay, I'm back. And while it is only a few seconds for you, it is actually the next day, hence the change of shirt. Which, by the way, I notice in my videos I have a tendency to wear the same clothes all the time. I do change my clothes, just so you, in case you were wondering, very often. But these clothes that I wear in my studio are mostly my downstairs work clothes that I don't care if I get glue on them or if I get threads and all kinds of fibers and stuff stuck to me. So yeah, I do change my clothes once in a while, and today I'm wearing a different shirt. So anyway, going back to this fabric, if I could have picked a worse project, I don't think so. This was definitely a test to my strength of taking this apart, because it was really hand sewn, and it was not the normal methods for doing, making clothing. And then on top of that, they made it smaller for somebody to fit somebody. But, I think it was more of a costume as opposed to a dress. And I think, that's sometimes when we make costumes, we cut corners and we just power through it. So, quite possibly the dress was made and it didn't fit. So whoever was sewing it just chopped it and re-sewed it the best that they could. So I did take the skirt apart from the lining and the fabric, and I'm going to talk about the lining shortly. But the fabric itself, it's a tulle overlay that has this machine embroidery on it. And there are two more pieces here that I've cut off. But I decided, because it was not cut perfectly straight in doing this, and that is something I will really explain shortly. It was cut with the idea that it was being made into a skirt, or a quick skirt. Because it wasn't cut straight, and because it's also tulle, it's always going to be an overlay onto something else. So I will never really use a big, huge piece of this. So I cut it down to something that's a little bit more manageable, that I can fold up the best I can and put in my stash, with the idea that, I may come along and just use this one piece and cut around it and collage with other stuff. Or I may use a big section in a book. But I've already got the two sleeves that I've decided to keep intact with the lining to use as a book. So this will go now in my stash. I'm sorry that I really can't show you much more with this at this point, because I really have to sit down and decide what it is I want to make with this. And I have so many projects on the go right now that I have to be reasonable with myself and say, no, you have to put it aside for now. But I do want to show you that when I did this, this was the hem. Oh, sorry, there's just a little activity going on here. This was the hem edge, and when I undid it, you can see how much extra I got. I got about a ½ an inch extra here. I haven't pulled my threads, which is something else I will do before I fold it up and put it away, because I like my fabric to be clean and ready to go when I want to use it. But if I follow along, and you can see there's lots of threads for me to pull. I hope you can see that. And you can see that the tulle is wider here and narrower over here, where the machine embroidery ends. So it was all to follow the skirt line. So I'm starting to wonder if this wasn't done after the skirt was put together, but again, I'm not sure, because this pattern is separate from all of these. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly how they would have done this, but it's cut it very strangely, and I just have to go with the flow and use it however I decide later on. And I may use the bulk of the embroidery separate, and then use these as little snippets and stuff that I can use in a journal or to make a snippet roll. So putting this aside, I will fold and clean everything up later on my own. So these were the pieces that were left over. I had 2 of them because I kind of cut it from either side of the skirt, And so that left me some part pieces. Again, this was at the edge of the skirt. So there was the folded hem part. You can see that I did gain about an inch on this one. It's not the full pattern, but still nice to use in clusters and in snippet rolls. So this is going to get cut up, and I will show you that before the video is over. But the next part I wanted to focus on was the skirt lining. Now the skirt lining, I've just loosely ironed it for now. I still have to pull the threads out of this. But I cut it in 2 reasonable pieces because, again, this isn't the greatest lining. I don't really have a use for it as using it for a book. If anything, I might use it to line a handbag. So I cut it into 2 reasonable pieces. They are not square. They are A-line, which I will explain in a second. So you can see where the waist is, that it's narrower. Even though I folded it up, it's narrower at the top than it is at the bottom. So I'm going to explain that on paper a little bit so you can get an idea. So these will just, I got to clean them up, but they will get folded up and put in my stash. And just so you know, all these little black things that you see on my table, I was working with black velvet just the other day, so I still have a lot of that kicking around. But to explain this skirt, how it was made, there are 2 ways to make a skirt. You cut a piece of material that is rectangular shaped. Maybe you cut 2 of them and you stitch them along the sides, or stitch the 2 sides together. You fold and stitch it, and then you gather it. So then it's gathered into the shape of a skirt. All at the top here, and so you have that bulk where it's all gathered. So when you take all the gathering out and take apart the seams, you're left with 1 or 2 pieces of rectangular fabric. When you have that, and it's cut straight on the fabric or salvage to salvage edges, you can make a cut, say at 2 inches, and tear it, and you will be left with a very straight piece that you can use as a sari ribbon or your distressed ribbon, or you can cut 2 of them and stitch them together to get a longer ribbon. You can cut a 6-inch piece to get a, like a 6-inch wide piece to have a snippet roll. You can have a bigger piece to use for a book cover or for other projects. Like I make handbags, so I usually have some 24 by 24 pieces that I like to keep just for handbags so that I'm ready. And so you can cut it quite easily on a straight line. Now what happens, or what happened in this case, and it's not my favorite method, I know people use it, but it's not my favorite method, is they cut a round circle with a hole in it to make their skirt. So the skirt actually goes like that, like a Christmas tree skirt. You know what you put on your Christmas tree? Except I think the Christmas tree skirts have I don't use one. I think they have an opening at the back or some ties or something at the back. But that's pretty much the concept, is they cut a big donut and then either stitch it or tie it on the sides. So in doing that, they've used a piece of paper that they've either folded in half or folded in quarters. So if they fold it in quarters, they probably cut it like this. I hope you can see all these things that I'm doing. And then, cut out the hole right there. So this would be 4 deep. If they cut it using the fabric, say the fabric was long and folded over. So this would have been folded from a square. Folded in half and then folded in quarters. So you would only have a quarter of your fabric to cut, and all this would be waste on the side here. I hope you can see that. But another possibility is they could have cut it like this and put a hole in it as well. So this would be 2 layers, half a donut with the hole for the skirt. that is their fast, simple method. And then they didn't require too much gathering at the waist and still gave you a full body skirt. Okay. Whereas cutting it this way, you had to gather more, and you still have a full body skirt, but you have to gather more, and then it's just a little bit more, a little easier, or a little harder actually to get the gathers to be even. Whereas this method, you pretty much know it's just enough to get it to stay in the shape of the person's waist. So they still would have probably stitched it at one side, but this is how their fabric would be. It's not exactly straight. So I'm going to go back to this design here. So if these are your straight edges, I hope this is making sense, because the fabric, you know, has the two different ways of weaving, right? The cross weaving and the straight up and down weaving. That's how fabrics are woven, going like that. So this would be the whole length that you would have to work with, and the whole width that you would have to work with on a skirt. So if I go to tear this material, it's going to tear now. If you can imagine, and I'll get another piece of paper here. If you can imagine that you've cut it on a fold. Okay, so it's, see, I needed the lines. Okay, so you've cut it on a fold, folded into four, like into 4 pieces. So when these are your straight lines still, right? So when you go to cut and tear, this is what you're getting. Again, I'm just showing you the same thing I just showed you, but now you can probably see it a little bit better. So no matter what the length of the skirt is, this is the longest piece you're going to get out of there that is straight. After that, they just get smaller and smaller and smaller until they're not usable. So just to give you an example, I wanted to straighten the edge, and so I just tore into it, and I got this little scratchy piece. That was the first piece I got out of the fabric. So this is not exactly the greatest fabric to use if you want to make long snippet rolls or continuous ribbons. You'll find that it'll be shorter pieces. You're going to have one really long piece, or maybe 2, depending on how it was folded, and then the rest are just going to get shorter as you cut them. So this is kind of a piece of fabric that I would save more to use for a bigger project, not to cut up into strips. Whereas when we cut up a straight piece of fabric where you've got the edges are squared off or rectangled off, you get the maximum length of your pieces going back and forth. Whether you go across or whether you go up and down, you still get the maximum length. Boy, I hope that made sense. So this type of donut cut in the skirt, as I call it, and you'll have to watch for it. Maybe you'll never run into it, but when you undo the gathering at the top of a skirt, you will find out quite quickly if it's a straight piece of fabric that you can cut into long strips or tear into long strips, or if it's a donut. You'll find that out pretty quickly. And the donut will have at least one slice in it where you have to join the donut together to make the skirt base. So that is why, or how I'm explaining why I wouldn't necessarily cut that fabric up, because I'd rather use it as a whole piece than try to get little strips that aren't going, then it causes more sewing and stitching the pieces together and making sure that you're stitching them straight so they don't end up wonky. that's, you know, cutting it on the bias and then cutting it against the bias so that you can sew the strips together. So that's my explanation for that. I hope it makes sense. If you're not a sewer, it might take a while to get that absorbed, and that's okay. And if my instructions weren't the best, I'm sorry. I still have to work on that part of explaining. So yeah, the 2 yellow lining pieces will be kept for either a lining of a bag that I can actually cut the piece out. And then I will have a lot of off-cut waste in order to get the shapes that I want. But the off-cut waste can then, again, still be used for clusters and those types of things. So this was the top bodice. I will still continue to take this apart off camera. And this will go into my little baggie of yellow snippets. I do keep bags of very loosely by color or style, and when I sit down to make snippets, I do work on them. And somebody just yesterday, Jody, had asked about me doing some work with my sewing machine. There is a possibility. I just bought a new sewing machine, well, not a new, a used one, not too long ago, and I would like to set it up somewhere where I can have quick access to it to do a video and show you. So that is a possibility for the future. And then we will do some snippets and other things, but again, it's way in the future at this point. So I'm going to continue with this garment to tell you or show you, just getting this out of my way. And these are those 2 off-cut pieces. Now, there's a lot of material here, but I'm really more concerned in these appliques that are on here. So I will sit and sort of loosely fussy cut around them. And when I say loosely, yeah, I'm going to keep some of the edges around every little thing and bring them into single pieces. And so this will then be used for maybe adorning something, you know, as an applique. It may go back on top of a piece of fabric to make a snippet roll, a really long one, where I would cut this in strips and use it. So there's a lot of possibilities here. So I will cut this up and then show you the finished pieces afterwards. But just to show you one more little thing. Now this was, again, taken out of the hem. So this, I'm hoping you can see this. This was folded up like that. So all we had at this point was this little piece. But after I took the hem out of it and flattened it, there's quite a bit of an applique here. And you might think, well, how on earth would you use that? So perhaps, you know, I have a journal page, of course, you know, just because I want to show you something. I have a journal page. I can take this applique and stitch it down the side of the page, perhaps stitch it to a fabric underneath or a book page, and then stitch or glue it down the side of the page and make a really pretty little tuck. Now, doesn't that look nice? And this is why I say always undo the hem, because you never know how much of the pattern or applique or lace or whatever is usable on inside the hem. And same with all the seams. I always take them apart. So now, again, you can see, or I hope you can see, there's a few threads that I still have to pull out. And I pull all these threads out, because there's nothing worse than sitting down to work with something and, oh, I got to take all the threads out first. So that is, you know, if you start practicing and doing that right from the get-go and ironing your fabric flat, ironing all those seams flat, it's just good practice, good habit, and someday you'll go, yeah, she was right. It's always better to start with a fresh piece. So these are the things that I'm going to do. Now, when I cut all these out, I'm going to be left with these little pieces of tulle. And I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with those as well. But let me take this off camera. I'm going to cut out all the appliques because I have them in 2 pieces here. So I'm going to take all of these and cut them out, and I will come back and show you the finished results. I'll be right back. Okay, here I am. So what seemed like only a few seconds was really about a half an hour. But I've got everything cut out of those two odd pieces that I had left over that I showed you. So this was that part of the applique, this bigger piece here, and I've just put it on the paper to show you how big it is. So this can be very easily used in a project or as an overlay on top of a fabric book cover or on a page. It might even be nice as a flip up on a page. I would, maybe trim it down a little bit. So there's lots of possibilities. So this now will go into my applique pile. And I got, I marked it down. I got 15 full red flowers, and all I did is I just trimmed them with a little bit of the yellow on the background. I leave it like that until I know exactly what I'm going to use this for, which I'll show you a few examples in a second. Now I got two, what I'm calling, or maybe three, part leaves, but you can see how long this is. It's about 16 inches long, just this piece here. And this one a little bit shorter, but pretty close to a good length. And if I put it alongside of a book page, you can see that it makes a really pretty trim that I could put on a book page. I can make them shorter. I can cut them off at the leaves where you don't see where I've snipped it, and it becomes a nice little tuck spot or flip that you can have on your page. So there's a lot of use for this, as well as still snippet and decorative uses. Then I showed you that little half piece of applique, how nicely it fits along the edge of a page. I managed to get two of those out of there. So yeah, it just takes, depending on which side it's on, as to which way you want it to face. It could also go along the top here as a nice decorative edge. Isn't that pretty? Oh my goodness, I love that. I could trim this down to two pieces and just keep that as a little page decoration in itself. So this is why, and this was on a fold. So I haven't even ironed this yet. So you can see how much would have got wasted that could turn into a beautiful little embellishment on one of your pages, wherever you want to put it. And even this little leaf, I don't discount these little pieces like this, and I'll show you in a second. So then I had another little part piece here of the leaf panels. I still have all the threads to pull out of these. But this again, same thing. It could be used along the top of a page as a decoration. On the side, it can be trim on a pocket. Lots of uses. Like this gets me excited to play again. And then I have I have three of these little rosettes that were not full size. But this one here just screams tab to me, because if I add a piece of paper behind it, I can make it as a little tab off of the edge of a page. It may be something a little bit more substantial, of course, but just to use as a tab at the end of the page. And that with a piece of ribbon or a little piece of bling or a couple of beads, and there again, it's nothing to dress this up and turn it into something worthwhile and worth using. And the same with these flowers here. It's got a little bit of the tool is missing off the bottom here. The petals are kind of off. I would just cut this in half and make it into two tab pieces and add some other things to it to cover up that little piece. Or I could go back to this little piece of leaf that was cut off, and I can tuck that underneath to make oh, that's so cute. I'm going to keep it. To make a cute little cluster behind the leaf, and you certainly do not notice that it was a little bit shabby. So in no time at all, you can change the look and just play around a little bit. I may not use that little red piece, that could be cut off, but this little leaf tucked under this flower, you really don't notice that it had a flaw in it. Same with this one here. It is only a part flower. Lots of it is missing. And it can be used as a tab. Same thing, can add the leaf onto it. And, you know, I could take this and just put a little rhinestone right there or a little bling. You won't even know that it's a part leaf and a part flower matched up together to make a little decoration. So craft with your eyes open. Take the time to totally analyze. Take the time to undo this. Like I said, this was all folded up inside the hem. So a lot of times you get some great pieces that you don't even realize are there just by taking the hem apart. So that's those little pieces. This was all cut out of those two offcuts of the tool. So there's these little scrappy bits, and I'm sure you're going, oh my gosh, what are you keeping that for? And then there were some bigger pieces that I got out of there. You know, some are a little bit more in size. These are great for clusters. They can be used under images, just like you would use cheesecloth. They can be added into snippet rolls or snippets or clusters. I will use it all in no time at all. So that's going to go in the pile with my other yellow bodice and scrappy bits. Again, this will all get ironed and taken apart. All the seams will get taken apart. All the threads will be pulled out, and it'll go in my yellow bag. So all this is going to go into my yellow bag, including these little bits, because I never know when sometimes I just want to take a little piece like this and just scrunch it up and fold it up into a little clustery bit, and I want to add it with a flower and a leaf. Let's see, and create a little bit. Sorry, I'm just doing this without having anything to hold it. Just create a little bit more depth to whatever I'm using it on the project. So there's all kinds of uses that way. So now, I don't cut the tool right to the edge of the flower, or onto the edge of the leaves until I know what it is I want to use it for. Sometimes I can use this yellow bit now to stitch beads onto here, or sequins, or jewelry parts and stuff. So I keep it just in case I want to do some stitching. And, you know, I certainly can stitch on top of these leaves. Same with the flowers. I don't want to cut it too close because I don't want it to unravel. And so I leave it as it is. And sometimes it just gives a little pop of color. As you can see, the yellow against the white. It's just a little pop of color that adds, again, a little more dimension to your projects. But I had a couple of doilies sitting not too far away, and I was going to grab a button, but I forgot. So I just took this doily, and now I'm going to put this flower in the center. And you see a little tiny bit of that yellow, maybe not very much, but it's very subtle. But I can take some of these scrappy little bits and just gather them up. I like to throw them one on top of each other kind of thing. And then I pinch it in the center. And, you know, if it's a little bit off where, you know, it looks too squared off, then I will make it look into sort of leaf shape. Yeah, those little tiny bits I threw away. And then I will tuck that underneath the flower just to give it a little bit more depth to your project. And you stitch a button in the center or a pearl in the center. I don't have one handy, sorry. And you really can make something really very pretty in no time at all. And how nice that would look as a little cluster on the edge of a pocket. Or look, there's that leaf again. Gosh, I'm going to have to go cut a bunch of those leaves. And so adding that doily behind also makes a difference. Or a piece of lace or a piece of ribbon. I have another doily here, a smaller one, that I can do kind of off center so that you see a little bit of the doily, but not where it's so overpowering. And again, add a button into there, and it gives you a little bit of depth. I hope you can see that, as well as this beautiful little clustery thing that you can add onto a project. So that's just a few little things just like that, right? Now, some of you might say, well, why would you cut these flowers out of the tool altogether? It's because in this case, I'm looking for appliques, and I got 15 out of that little piece of fabric. And then this is the offcuts. Remember the offcuts. And then these are the full-size pieces of leaves. This thing is about It's not, oh yeah, it's a yard long. So I've got about 7 pieces that are a yard long. Can you say snippet roll with that? All I have to do is run it down the center of some material with some fabric and crocheted doilies and a little bit of lace, and you really can dress it up so nicely. I can then take this, let's get some of this out of the way. If I had this yellow fabric underneath, we're reconstructing the dress. But if I had some scrappy yellow fabric underneath, I can now place these roses in, or these little flowerets into spots where I want them to be on top of that to create a whole new look again. So these are pieces that I cut out of the fabric for the purpose of using them as appliques. It's not to say I won't sew them all back together in some strange way, but, you know, like I said, doily underneath here, flower there. Let's get that little leaf. Isn't this a great little leaf? And tuck that in for a pop of color, stitch down a button, and look at the nice snippet you can make. And I could just continue at the whole length of these gold leaves. So while I was slow on showing you how to actually dissect the dress, I hope you get enough at the end of this video to make it worth your while. Now, everything, like I said, gets all taken apart, all ironed, all those little threads get pulled out, and they do get organized, because I can't live in a huge mess when it comes to my fabrics and trying to find something to work on as a project. But this is what I cut out. These are the offcuts, the appliques, and the little bits. And don't forget, I have 2 pieces of full-size skirt lining that I can now use for doing lining bags, or, you know, it may be the lining of a journal cover someday. I don't know. But then I also have this huge piece of fabric that I can make decisions on as I go. If I use up all these appliques that I've cut out and those leaves that I've cut out, I can go back and still cut this out as well. But I have a nice big huge piece to make that decision later on. So this will get cleaned up, folded up, and put aside for, you know, when I'm actually thinking of working on a project. But if that wasn't enough, I still had the 2 sleeves that I've left intact. Just got to iron them and take the rest of the threads out. And these will be journal covers for sure. And there is enough little leftover pieces, like even having this yellow here. It's not to say I couldn't go back to these appliques and grab a couple of leaves, cut them off. You know, I could cut a small piece like that, add a flower, and I've instantly got something that matches my journal cover that I can now put throughout the book in little clusters and snippets however I want, whether it's a half flower for a tab, a full flower for a decoration, a piece of this gold trim as a flip. I have lots of options now as to what I can add into the book. And when I square this off to an actual journal size page, I'm going to have all these little leftover bits too. And yeah, I get just as excited about having those pieces as having the whole sheet. So that's my yellow dress dissected. I still have some work to do. I probably have about 2 to 3 hours of work yet to get everything organized. So some of these appliques will eventually end up in my shop for sale. And yes, I know when you look at them and you say, well, she's selling 6 or 8 for $1, you know, I haven't figured out how many I want to keep and what I want to sell. How can she justify that when she only paid $7 or $8 for the dress, and how much stuff she got out of the dress? Well, I spent 4 to 5 hours of cutting, trimming. You know, yes, I get the video made out of it, but I do have to get some of my money back. I do have to make some kind of wage per hour. And if you take 4 to 5 hours of time and just do your basic minimum wage, you know that it takes a lot to recoup that cost. So it's not that I need to recoup the cost completely, but it's just nice to be able to make a little bit back. So when I sell 6 appliques or 8 appliques for $1, I hope you can understand and justify why I'm charging that. And besides, if you went to buy 6 or 8 appliques anywhere, you'd have to pay a lot more than what you're paying to buy them from a recycled dress. And if you wanted to buy the dress, you got to find the dress to get these appliques. So for $1, you would get 6 to 8 in my store, whatever I decide to sell them at. And yeah, please don't question my price. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this. Please leave me comments. Let me know your thoughts on this. I would like to keep going, but I need a little bit of feedback from you to see what you got out of it, what you need from this yet. And each garment is going to be different. Each thing I take apart is going to be different. I hope I get an easy one. I was saying to my friend Caroline yesterday, I said, oh my gosh, I should have started with a bed sheet. That would have been the easiest thing. But I gave myself this project only because I was getting ready to put it away after I did my thrifty haul. So yeah, I hope you'll leave me comments as to what you got out of this, what you would like to see in the future, and if I'm on the right track with this, because this is not an easy thing to do for me. Okay, I wish you all a very creative day, and stay tuned later on today. I'm hoping to get another thrifty haul out, and tomorrow, Tuesday, will be my Techniques Tuesday. See y'all then. Bye for now.